The, the, everything you said, I want to associate myself with. Here's our dilemma. There are two forces inside of Syria that are a threat to us and to the region and to the people in Syria. ISIL, al-Nusra, the other radical Sunni groups, are certainly a threat to the United States. Raqqa, which is the capital of ISIL's caliphate, is in Syria. They planned the attacks in Paris and Europe out of Raqqa. They communicate with sleeper cells throughout the world. Thousands of Westerners have gone to Syria for training under ISIL's control. So the bottom line is, it is in our interest to destroy this caliphate because the next 9/11 type attack is being planned in Syria. And if you take the land away from ISIL, then you're doing a lot of damage to them. They become a terrorist organization rather than a terrorist army. So the plan to destroy ISIL is beyond ill-conceived. I had dinner last night with the Turkish ambassador. What is the ground force that we're relying upon to go take Raqqa away from ISIL? You're clearly not going to win the war from the air. We've done a lot of damage, but the air campaign will not destroy the caliphate. Somebody has to go in on the ground and actually liberate Raqqa, take Mosul back, and all the other stuff. Inside of Syria, the main fighting force is a Kurdish force called the YPG. The Kurdish force inside of Syria is the mortal enemy of Turkey. You've seen on 2 occasions where Turkey used military force against the coalition we're training to destroy ISIL, because in the eyes of Turkey, substituting ISIL for YPG Kurds is not a good trade. So most members of the body, I don't know if you've followed this, you should. The whole goal is not to destroy ISIL, is to do as much damage to ISIL as possible and pass this problem on to the next president. Senator McCain and I have for a couple of years made the argument that the liberating force, if it's made up of Kurds, is doomed to fail. The Arabs in the region are going to have a hard time turning over more of Syria to the YPG Kurds. It's a non-starter for Turkey. So this ceasefire is brought on by the fact that Aleppo is hell on earth. The administration goal was to destroy ISIL and replace Assad. Assad will be in power and Obama will be gone. And this failure of the Obama administration to act effectively has changed the balance of power. As four years ago, Senator McCain and I and others argued to help the Free Syrian Army while it was still intact. The entire national security team of President Obama advised him to aggressively train the Free Syrian Army to take Assad out because he's a puppet of Iran. The one thing I can tell you, no Arab country in the region is going to recognize Assad as the legitimate leader of Syria because his main benefactor is the Iranians, their mortal enemy. So instead of helping the Free Syrian Army, President Obama blinked and took a pass. That vacuum was filled. Hezbollah sent in 5,000 fighters. They're a puppet of Iran also. They're a militia, Hezbollah militia, supported by the Iranians, came to Assad's aid as we backed off of helping the Free Syrian Army. Then Russia came in for Assad. So now the Russian president has been bombing forces trained by the American president, and we're not doing a damn thing about it. All the training we provided to the Free Syrian Army has been basically neutered by the fact that Russia and Iran are now firmly in Assad's camp. When we were trying to train Syrians to go take out ISIL, we also wanted them to take the fight to Assad. Obama's refusal to really do anything about Assad has created a vacuum. Very few Syrians are going to go fight ISIL and not turn their attention to the butcher of Damascus, the person who's killed 250,000, 400,000 of their family. So this whole Syrian strategy is flawed. The ceasefire is an opportunity for Assad and Russia to retrench. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to have a ceasefire. Hopefully some of the humanitarian aid will get to Aleppo. But as Senator McCain said, when it's all said and done, they're going to gobble up more territory. And this idea of the United States partnering with Russia to go after the al-Nusra group that's changed their name, to me is very dangerous. Our military is very reluctant to share with the Russian military targeting, how we know where people are at. Sharing information with the Russians is a very dangerous thing to do in Syria, because their goal is not to just destroy radical Islamic groups. Their goal is to keep their puppet Assad in power. So this whole idea of a joint operations center where the United States and Russia will focus their attention on al-Nusra elements is doomed to fail, because in the eyes of Assad, everybody that opposes him is a terrorist. All the people we're training to liberate Syria from Assad, in the eyes of Assad, are no different than ISIL. So to expect Assad and Russia to limit their military activity to radical Islamic groups and not go after the opposition in general defies the past. Russia has dropped more bombs, Senator McCain, on people we've trained than they have on ISIL. Russia has hit more targets aligned with opposition to Assad than they have al-Nusra targets. Why? Russia is using their military might to give Assad military superiority and at the same time helping on the margins with radical Islam. So the biggest mistake of all was to not help the Free Syrian Army when they were intact, to allow Russia and Iran to fill this vacuum. And I will say this, to anybody on the other side believes that this strategy is going to result in Assad leaving, you're completely out to lunch. Why would Assad leave when he's winning? Why would Assad leave when Russia and Iran is firmly in his camp? Why would Assad leave when the Russians can bomb the people the Americans are training to take Assad out and America would do nothing about it? So this whole idea that there's some plan coming that will replace Assad is a complete fantasy. This ceasefire is not going to bring about the results we all would hope, which is to the destruction of ISIL and the removal of the butcher of Damascus, Assad, who is an enemy of the Syrian people, who helped send fighters into Iraq to kill American soldiers as we're trying to help the Iraqis, who's a puppet of Iran and a proxy of Russia. So to the administration, most people are not paying any attention. You're literally getting away with political national security malpractice because most people are not paying much attention, and it's a war over there involving people that we really can't relate to. All I can tell you, you should be worried about what's going on in Syria because it's going to affect us here at home. We're about to give yet another Arab capital to the Iranians. This will be the fourth Arab capital that Iran has been basically had de facto control over, and that's not good for our interests because our Arab allies are going to be put in a spot one day where they have to fight back. If you want to create a bigger war in the Mideast, we're on track to do it. We're about to create a conflict from our Turkish allies and the people we're training to liberate ISIL, Raqqa from ISIL inside of Syria. In the effort of destroying ISIL, we've created a nightmare for Turkey. In the effort of destroying ISIL, we're giving Assad a pass, which is a nightmare for Jordan and Lebanon and all of our Arab allies. In other words, in our efforts to destroy ISIL, we're empowering Iran. In our efforts to destroy ISIL, we're making Russia more effective in the Mideast than they've been since the early 70s. In our efforts to destroy ISIL, we've created an imbalance of power in the Mideast that will come back to haunt us. The bottom line is Obama and his administration wanted this nuclear deal with the Iranians so much that he would not challenge their proxy in Syria, that they want cooperation with the Russians so much when it comes to Iran and other issues. They won't challenge Russian aggression inside of Syria. And here's what's going to come back to bite us all. Nobody in the Mideast in the future is going to rely upon us. Every Arab government that I've talked to has asked me, where has America gone? Why should we join with you? You're an unreliable ally. And the stain on our honor is very great. All those young Syrian men that we brought to the fight, that we trained to fight ISIL and get rid of Assad, Many of them have been killed by Assad and Russia, and we haven't done a damn thing about it. So what are the consequences of this? It's going to be harder for people to work with us in the future. It's going to be easier for our enemies to pill off people in the region. And the vacuum that we're creating today is going to grow over time. So I hope the next president, whoever he or she will be, will revisit our strategy in Syria, because it is on a collision